It's the home stretch of my layout build. We've got just 2 modules to go. Let's get this thing done.
This video is brought to you by Model Railroad Academy.
The last module I made, I 3D printed a highway bridge using my Bamboo Lab X1 Carbon and its multi-material unit. Well, these type of devices have actually become more available and more affordable. And I thought to myself, could I print a fully painted surface street with this? Well, let's warm up the 3D printer and see what we can do. Here we go.
Now the first thing we need to do is prep the module, and what I'm going to do here is I clean it off and then just give it its brown base coat. This is so if there's any gaps in the scenic base or anything like that, it's a bit better disguised, and this is something that I typically do.
Now that the module is prepped, I need to design my road.
I designed these road sections in Tinkercad. Now this is a pretty complicated tutorial and be a lot to go in and would be a video on its own. I am working on that Tinkercad guide, so be on the lookout for that. And what I have here is basically I took the designs, I put them on the road, and I made them 1/10 of a millimeter higher than the road surface. I then took them into my Bamboo Lab print slicer, and I was able to color them using the Bamboo Lab software. Depending on what printer you use, you're going to be using different software, and then I printed them out.
I know these are somewhat complicated techniques, and if you're looking to learn some new techniques or just brush up on your skills, you should check out today's sponsor, Model Railroad Academy.
Model Railroad Academy is your online resource for model railroad instructions, ideas, and information, with loads of tutorials and articles for model railroaders of every skill level.
One of my favorite videos that I've watched recently is making your own homemade ballast, and it's just a really cool tutorial that shows you how to make custom ballast in case you're doing a prototype that doesn't have a commercially available ballast. Plus you can find tutorials on everything from bench work to electronics to scenery, all sorts of things there. The first 1,000 people to sign up at the link in the description below will get a full year of premium membership to Model Railroad Academy for $1.49. Offer is valid for new members only. Now that I have all the road pieces, I can attach them, and I'm going to be using tacky glue to put these things in place. So I start off by building these little risers that I printed off that give me the correct angle that I want, and I did those doing a little bit of finagling in Tinkercad. So I get those pushed in there, and then I glue the road surface on top. This way I could print it out nice and evenly and flat. I did try to print it out all at once, but it made the designs look a little weird, so that's why I have the risers in place. Now I need to put down the first flat section of road, so I put a little bit of tacky glue down, but then I'm also going to need to get these to attach to the part of the road that's coming down from the crossing. So I use a little bit of a plastic cement, and that's going to basically do a little bit of dissolving and do a little bit of plastic welding. With the PLA, I was able to do this with the bridge, and so it let me know that it was going to work, and it actually started working a little better when I did this. So go ahead and get those attached, and then it's just a rinse and repeat process for attaching the other pieces. The last thing I have to attach is this base for the buildings that includes the sidewalk and the rounded edges. And again, I'm just using tacky glue. I'm not going to attach this to the rest of the road with the plastic cement, but we're just going to go ahead and get that in place, push it in place, and let it dry. And then we have one last little sidewalk to put in over here as well.
Next, we need some buildings, so might as well print those too. I'm going to warm up my Elgu Mars 5.
Now, these buildings are actually Patreon models of the month from the last couple months. They are what are called Merchants Row buildings. They're designed to stick together really close, and this is buildings number 1 and 2. I'm printing off 2 number 1s and 1 number 2. That sounds a little confusing, but we're going to go ahead and get these printing in the printer and get them cleaned up. Now that the models are all cleaned up, I can go ahead and get them painted. Now I use spray paint for these models, works really well. Now what I'm using here is a little bit of Rust-Oleum's Matte Paprika. I find this to be a really good brick color once it dries, and you can see me just doing little puffs, and what that basically is just making sure that I don't overwhelm the details with paint layers, because the details are quite small. And I just have a spare cardboard box that I had, and I'm just doing a little bit of spray painting and turning the whole thing. Now this is also because I'm spray painting outside and there's a little bit of wind, so I want to make sure that I'm hitting the same angle and don't have this paint blowing everywhere. Now next up, I'm going to be masking off the areas that I want to be gray. So I take some painter's tape and I mask off all of the areas that I need to be gray, and then cover up the rest of the model so that none of the gray leaks out on anywhere. And then I just cut any of the spaces that I need to using a little box cutter knife, and that's going to get us our nice clean lines. And I remove the tape, and then I can do the painting. Now the way that I do the painting with this is I'm actually going to paint it again with that paprika red color, and what that's going to do is it's basically going to fill in all the little imperfections in the seal that the tape has. And then I come back and I paint the gray over it once that has completely dried. So that's why you saw that the tape was red. I just forgot to hit record because I'm not a smart guy, but then I'm just going to go ahead and paint everything just by twisting it around and let it dry.
Now we need to put down our scenery material.
We're going to start off with the ballast, of course. I always do ballast before I put down any of the turf for scenery, and I start off by putting a line of glue on the Catalina track so that I can get something to hold the ballast as I am shaping it. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be putting on the ballast, and I use the cup of the ballast cup. This is Woodland Scenic's fine medium grade ballast, and I just spread it out roughly where it needs to go. You don't need to get it exact right here, and then you're going to go ahead and just use a brush or something like that to kind of shape it the exact way you want. And then once you're done with that, you'll go ahead and soak it with IPA to break the surface tension, and then you'll bring in your white glue water mixture, which I've actually changed mine a little bit to about 30% white glue, and then the rest is water. And then I put a couple drops of dish soap in it just to get it a little bit more flowing, and it works really well. So once you've got that done, then you can just let that dry, and then we can move on to the other scenic materials. Now for the scenery itself, we're going to go ahead and put down some white glue. We're going to spread it out with a brush. You want to get any drops like that off of the road, like right there. You can just get them off with your fingers, nothing crazy. But go ahead and spread that around so something has something to adhere to. I won't get it too close to the ballast, but I will get it very close to the road, just enough, because this isn't going to be the only glue that holds down that scenery. once the glue is down, I can put down the very base material, which is that Woodland Scenics blended turf, kind of an earth blend, and that basically works as the dirt or the soil that's going to be under the materials. The thing that I always tell people when they're doing this is you don't want it to be all one color. Nature isn't all one color, so giving a mix of browns and different shades of greens is going to give you the most realistic result. Now for this area back here, we're going to do something a little bit different. Now this is an area where vehicles need to access. They're going to come off the road right there. They're going to come to the back of the buildings for deliveries. They may be pulling up for something that's on the spur right there. So we're actually going to be using Woodland Scenics gravel. And this is a cool product. It's a very fine mixed color fine gravel, and so we're going to spread that in, and you want to make sure that your ballast is dry before you do this so you can brush off any of the excess. But go ahead and get that in there, and it's okay if it mixes in a little bit. It's going to look more natural that way, but we're going to go ahead and get it all spread around here nice and evenly to kind of even out where the road is. This is also a great material to put on the shoulders of the road to illustrate kind of a soft shoulder of the road. Now we're going to be going through and doing just the rest of the scenery, adding some more of that scenic base, and then we'll come back with some greens and put them in places that we need them to. I'm actually going to sprinkle a tiny bit of green on the gravel when I do it, but we'll get everything in place, and then we're going to go right back, soak it with IPA and then that white glue water mixture, and let it dry. Now, once all that is dried, we can come in and do some weathering, and I've got my weathering powders right here, and we're going to start with the tracks. And what I do is I basically come in with some dark color, some blacks and browns, and I'm going to weather those tracks because a lot of times you're going to have stuff dripping off the trains, whether it's grease, oil, brake dust, anything like that. That's going to be dripping off of the trains right here, and it's going to collect in the middle. If you've ever looked at real tracks, you'll notice it's kind of dark in the middle over the ties, and it may be more of a monotone color than just simply having the track with ballast all around it. So you want to just kind of brush this everywhere and get those tracks nice and dirty. And you will need to come back and clean the tops of the rails after this. Now the next thing I'm going to do here is the Woodland Scenics gravel comes with a dirt mixer with it that kind of gives it a more realistic. So I'm going to kind of sprinkle this all over the gravel area and even on the tracks too. These tracks are supposed to look a little bit more disused. They're not mainline tracks. It's a spur, and a lot of these times they're not too well kept up. So this is just going to kind of lean into that idea that this isn't the most well kept little spur. So we're going to make this nice and dusty and get this all evened out and blend it in as best as we can and just kind of swirl it around until we get a good look. Now it's time to weather the roads, and what we're going to do is basically kind of weather the center line of the roads and let it spread out a little bit, but basically kind of where all of the dripping off of cars, tire dust, like brake dust, all that kind of stuff is going to collect off of that. So we're just going to kind of run down the lines of the lanes, and we're just going to go back and forth. We're going to leave the center turn lane a little bit less weathered, but that's going to basically just give the idea that the road has been well used, and we're just going to go straight across the crossing with it and everything. Now, one thing you'll also notice is that when I get to the intersection up here, I do some of the turns as well to make it look like a well-worn turn. I kind of just follow the road.
And last but not least, the buildings.
Now we can remove that masking tape, and you can see it did a pretty good job of holding those lines. A few spots I'm going to have to touch up, but overall I am super happy with the results. These are going to look good on my layout. I placed the 3 buildings on there. This isn't going to be the absolute final placement, so I have to do some work to them. But yeah, this looks really, really good. I'm really happy with the way this turns out. And here is my picture for frame of reference, by the way.
Now, one thing you'll not see on here right now is the details, the cars, the people, the signs, anything. In the past, I've done all this as part of a larger video, and I've got quite a few of those. I'll try to link some at the end. Well, when the basic layout is done, I'm going to do an entire video on detailing this whole layout, what parts I use, my DIY processes, everything. So be on the lookout for that. It should be a really cool video. Thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, and happy railroading.